This is Lopan Yudron coming at you from Oakland, California. The wonderful Ngakchang Gotzel, a happy garden of practitioners here, where I am all alone today. Both my roommates are staying elsewhere right now. I'm enjoying the solitude, to be honest, and I'm pretty much puttering around like a nun, getting ready for a number of online Buddhist programs. But today is a special day. It's in the lunar month. That means according to the days of the phases of the development of the moon, starting on the date that the Tibetans start on. That was complicated. This is called the 10th day of the lunar month, or Sechu. And for us, in the tradition I follow of Tibetan Buddhism, the Nyingma, it's called Guru Rinpoche Day. And each of the months of the calendar year, every time on the 10th, we remember Guru Rinpoche Day and we practice. And the idea is to practice together in a group. And we do practices that call in Guru Rinpoche Padmasambhava, who was like a second Buddha. He was an amazing figure that helped stabilize and establish the Dharma in Tibet. There'd been many efforts to establish it. 2,000 years ago, this is 2021. 1500, a long time ago in Tibet. And all the efforts failed, and they seem to have just sort of the whole universe seemed to be working against the establishment of Buddhism in Tibet. And there was a lot of political opposition, there was religious opposition to it. So the kind bodhisattva, as they call him, Shantarakshita, a wonderful monk who was a great scholar, had tried to build a monastery, and they build it during the day, and at night demons would tear it down. And then they try again, and at night demons would tear it down. And finally Guru Rinpoche came in. And so the people who without faith, scholars and so forth, say, oh, he was just some sorcerer they brought in. He wasn't really that important. But for us, Guru Rinpoche, which simply means Rinpoche is like most precious. Guru is heavy with great qualities, and a guru, of course, Lama, the teacher. So this greatest of teachers, and it become kind of, Guru Rinpoche has become kind of a principle, like a principle of the spiritual guide, mentor and guide, energy, like the feeling of, like every Lama, in some sense, in our allegorical world. An allegory is like a story where every novel and everything in it symbolizes something else. So we live this, as practitioners, we kind of reconstruct our world around kind of imagining we're Guru Rinpoche's disciples back in 700 AD, around then. And our teacher is Guru Rinpoche, and we're wonderful, very, very exemplary students, his 84 best disciples, and like that. It's very beautiful and elegant. So, is there anybody watching out there? Say hi to me if there is. Nope, not so far. So I just want to acknowledge that whatever day of the month that you see this, if you ever wonder, what are those Nyingma Buddhist practitioners doing on what is their pattern of getting together? How do they practice? Well, for practitioners of Vajrayana Buddhism, the Nyingma school, we get together ideally on the 10th of the month to remember Guru Rinpoche and the guiding principle in general. And we practice ritual feasts together. We make merit. This is supposed to be multiplied during that day every month. And then on the 25th of the lunar calendar, we celebrate Dakini Day, the feminine principle, essentialized in Yeshe Sogya, sort of the mother of Tibetan Buddhism, who was the most amazing disciple of Guru Rinpoche, who had like a photographic memory, could remember everything, wrote everything down perfectly, saved it for future generations, and accomplished the entire path to Buddhahood in a single lifetime, just like they talk about in books. So I just thought I'd mention that. We're going to be getting together after this broadcast with my local Sangha, or at least, let's see, it's an interesting thing where as I record this, we are still in a pandemic, and people are practitioners in my tradition of Tibetan Buddhism. They have a lot to do on Guru Rinpoche Day, because nowadays, instead of having to go 5 hours to see a special Lama who lives out in the countryside, or not see your Lama for a year, your teacher, or fight traffic all the way across town, which in the olden days of the Bay Area a year ago was nearly impossible sometimes, and make it to a little center and do it with your Vajra sisters and brothers. That's what we call each other, like Dharma, close Dharma family. But nowadays, you can do sok from morning to night on Guru Rinpoche Day, because all the lamas are doing ceremonies in their own homes or centers, and so many of them are inviting in disciples and the public sometimes to participate in the sok or the ceremony with them virtually. And this is a wonderful, totally wonderful thing. And it's reminiscent of how kind the Tibetan people have been, and the Tibetan lamas and their families, to share this wonderful path of practice with us. Never saying, you don't belong here because you have white skin, or you're from a different country, or anything like that. Greeted and welcomed in with a wonderful, what do they call that? When you welcome your guests? Wonderful, anyway. Hospitality. But more than hospitality, like you're the same. We're all the same. We're human beings, and the Dharma can work with all of our lives. And so a person like me, I've been reflecting on, this week I've been reflecting on my name, Yudron, which is a Tibetan name. And a Lama I'm no longer know gave it to me 20 years ago, a little bit, 30 years ago. Whoops. Almost 30 years ago. And said you could use it, or you could not use it in your personal life. And I've never been all that fond of my birth name. And I like Yudron Wamo. All Dharma names, they're called refuge names. When you become a Buddhist, you're given a name. Usually in the language of origin of the tradition. So in the Japanese Zen, you get a Japanese marvelous name. And in a Tibetan tradition, you get a name in Tibetan, which they then translate for you. They often will make a wonderful paper with a name written on it, nice calligraphy, and the translation, and stamp it and make it a little bit beautiful to give you as a memento of that occasion, and also so you won't forget it. It's easy to forget a name in a foreign language. It's very beautiful to be part of something like that. So it was quite common then in Lama Tarchen Rinpoche's Sangha. He was a great Lama who lived here in California after he left Asia, for us to call ourselves by our refuge name in Tibetan. And there was never a thought like this is cultural appropriation, or we're trying to be Tibetan, or anything like that. It didn't have any association of trying to be Tibetan, or pretend we're Tibetan, or assimilate their culture. We didn't think of it as culture. We thought of it as universal Dharma. And the lamas were right on board with that with us. In the Tibetan lamas, never making us feel like we're outsiders. I mean, I suppose there are probably some people who stayed in Himalayan countries who never are not comfortable with other people. But this is not the way of our teachers. So bringing in then, changing our very calendar that we operate by is pretty beautiful to think. And in any event, that there's 2 holidays a month minimum. How many? We don't have that many holidays in the year. Is pretty beautiful. But to also to commemorate, it's astrological according to their astrology system, which I don't know. I've never specialized in the significance of the 10th. I need to learn. But it shows that it came from an agricultural society, a society of connected with nature, right? So they knew what phase the moon was in. Did you know that this is the 10th day of the moon, waxing moon? I'm out of touch right now. Sometimes when I stay out in the country, of course, I see the moon and I'm connected to it. So I like it, and it's actually a requirement if you're a very traditional Vajrayana practitioner, this style of Buddhism. You have to do soak on the 10th and 25th. And if you have, the ideal is to have men and women together to do the soak, means this ritual feast. And you repair your commitments, the purity of your relationship with each other. If you've had minor blowouts with your close Dharma family, this is a time when you confess, because we're all the very path of the Vajrayana. It may seem strange if you're not used to it, but it's to view everybody as pure, and how you really view people's Buddha nature, but their inner beauty. You tune in on that, and if you lose track of that you think that this start to have thoughts, liking and hating, and particularly a lot of rage or anger or even violence with your Dharma friends, then that's really disruptive to your own practice and to their practice and to the community. So we repair those kind of infractions. Hopefully nobody's getting in fistfights in my Sangha this week, but there's been bumps, So I'm going to confess tonight my soak, and it's not just there's so many beautiful things about it. We can't even go into it here, but instead we're going to go back and talk about the topic that I put up for this talk. And this is called Boundless Joy. I struggled a long time trying to find a name for this, to put on that little card that you see with the illustration and so forth. It's called a thumbnail. Because, I came up with some fancy word for it. It's typically they say sympathetic joy, but sympathy to us sounds like you're sympathizing for something negative, Sympathetic sadness would be what we would think of. But this is a practice it belongs to these boundless qualities, 4 boundless qualities. We've already talked about joy, compassion, and now, we talked about love, compassion, and now joy. And once again, I'm going to go back to this wonderful book by Khenpo Ngawang Palzang. Not focusing. Focus, baby. No, it wants to focus on my face. Anyway, it's blue. You can see that. Khenpo Ngawang Palzang, Khenpo Ngaga, Khenpo Ngakchung, is just a tremendously influential figure, and he supplemented an earlier text with wonderful points of practice, mainly. And this is called A Guide to the Words of My Perfect Teacher. And so he says that when you're training in sympathetic joy, you begin by focusing on your mother. So we talked last week about when we were talking about compassion, which was a harsh topic. He had us focus on our mom and thinking that we could remember. This scholar was not at all trying to polish up the image of our mothers and pretend like they were perfect, because he, gave a lot of examples about how moms might be screwed up, but at the same time holding appreciation for our mothers, who most of us feel deep connection to, and we'd only want them to be happy. We would only want them to be free from suffering and hardship, right? At the very least, we would want that for them. And so we use them, who we've been so close to in this life, ideally, and as an example, and then expand it out. Here he focuses very for most of this passage on sympathetic joy on the mom herself, and not so much on the expanding it out. And so he leaves that for the very end. So if you're following along at home and you're with me so far, please like and subscribe. If you subscribe, if I eventually get a certain number, there's a lot of not monetary perks, but perks like being able to travel and do videos and leave little messages on my video stream, things like that will be really super useful to you and me. So I appreciate the subscriptions. And if you're interested in working with our Sangha on virtually this in the coming year, we have a wonderful program coming up next year that's about to be announced. So for that, you would get on, this is currently 2020. So if you're watching later, this program's going to start in the late spring of 2021, possibly summer. So get on our email list at myownmountain.net. I think if you go up to the top there, you'll see a little clicky thing for My Own Mountain. Go to that page and get on our email list. All right. So you begin by focusing on your mother and acknowledge her, reflecting on her kindness again. And then meditate on both love, we've already spoken about, right? Your love for her that you feel come up when you think of the very best of your mother and the kindness she showed to you, the pain she went through giving birth to you, how she protected you, how she fed you. Basically, you were helpless, and she, and your father took care of you in order for you to survive. Even if you're in therapy now because there were issues, you owe your life to those people, and usually your mom in particular. So feel that love come up. Remember, wishing that your mom would be happy and that she would be free of suffering. So remembering the first two boundless qualities that we've talked about last week and the week before. Then we're going to move to this joy topic, which is hardly ever talked about, frankly. Love and compassion, we all know that about Buddhism, but this is right up there with that. So imagine that things are going well for your mom. She's alive and she has a good quality, she has a good family, she has a good name, happiness, and well-being. Whatever little she has of each of these, she is the object or focus. And while the mental attitude or form this takes is to consider how much these things make her happy, to consider how much she needs them, and to consider how indispensable they are to her, all these good qualities that she has, just how important they are for her happiness and welfare. That itself is meditating on joy. So to think, wow, mom needs all these things. She needs to have a roof over her head and some food on the table. She needs to have good people around her. She needs to be happy. Isn't it wonderful that she has those things? So just reflecting on that for a moment, letting it sink in. Hello, hello out there. So then think, whatever well-being and its cause virtue, however small my old mother may have, may these never decline nor be lost, but go on increasing more and more. So this is referencing the Buddhist idea of merit and positive karma. So to get a human birth, as we've discussed, to be born as a human in the first place, that requires, in the Buddhist framework, you could be reborn as anything in any kind of situation. If you think about the number of anythings, the number of different life forms you could have taken, this is unbelievably good, right? You're not being chased by coyotes, most likely, and you have a home, you have food. It's so wonderful. What's coming through my mind is an old feminist anthem. And I'm trying to remember the words if I can. This isn't a political broadcast, but there was a time in the 70s and 80s where women musicians started expressing appreciation of the qualities of women for the first time, other than being the, sex object or motherly figure. They were not outside of a reference point to men, just unto themselves. And well, if it wasn't for the women, we would not be living. We would not be something. If it wasn't for the women, if it wasn't for the women, what would we do? We wouldn't have health or food or something. The song by Alex Dobkin. So you can. It's hard to find her work these days, but I'm sure you could find it on YouTube somewhere. If it wasn't for the women by Alex Dobkin, ALIX. We would not be joyful singing if it wasn't for the women. So that kind of uplifted feeling. Like actually, maybe Alex was onto something. She certainly was. So the idea that your virtue and merit in this life creates a circumstance for a positive rebirth, a human life, not only a human life, or a very, very special human life where you get exposed to Dharma. You have the attention span to listen to an old woman talk on YouTube, or a very stern, scholar talk on YouTube at a really slow pace compared to the rest of YouTube. And somehow you've developed a fascination with this Dharma because of your merit and virtue from past lives. And you get to hear Dharma voices. Suddenly you find that you're drawn to those statues of Buddhas everybody puts in their gardens, and you want to hang up those prayer flags, and you not even sure maybe what it means. But there's that connection there. So something really wanting to have a positive, uplifted, compassionate, joyful life full of wisdom, wanting to recognize deeper truths, find that, figure out what the ultimate nature of reality is, and like that. I'm sorry, Khenpo Ngawang Palzang. I'm being a little bit free with my interpretation here. So, just that wish that not only the happiness and the good circumstances under which your mom finds herself, but the causes for happiness always not only remain, but they grow. They grow more and more over time. And not only that, as you say to yourself, I'm going to make sure that I'm the one that make them grow. So taking responsibility. So maybe there's even some action involved in that. So you think you want her to attain in the next lifetime, or maybe she's already passed on like mine, and you think, I really want her to have a really nice rebirth and then go on to complete enlightenment in the future. And you pray to the three jewels, the Dharma, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So you meditate like this, alternating analytic and resting meditation. This will lead to the certainty that also subject, that's you, object, that's her, and the action may appear. They don't really exist. It's not a thing. So let's do that. Analytic meditation is a funny word, in English. Kind of makes you think like you're solving a math puzzle. But here it just means like a meditation using your mind, of bringing your mother to mind, and or your grandmother or whoever else you feel this way about. And then noticing, going through and saying, wow, she had this. She had enough money for clothes. She always had enough, she had flowers in her garden. They had good air to breathe. And where she is, the air is pure. It can be as simple as that, She has coins in her purse. It doesn't have to be much, or she's very wealthy. I hope that even gets more so she can be safe and well taken care of in the future. And work with that brings up feelings for you to wish a wealthy person more money. This is the time to work with that. We'll go on with that thought. So let's do that. I'm going to ring the little bell, and we'll start by bringing that thought, imagining that thought, and then we'll move on to this resting and meditation. Turn the sound effects down. All right, so let's just rest in meditation here a little bit for a minute or two. All right, so let's go back and think again about our dear precious mother or grandmother or grandfather. bringing up that feeling of love and no harm wanting to come to them, that they'll be free of suffering, all the conditions, if they've gone on to another life, that they'll have all the causes and conditions to meet with a good spiritual path, such as a great Lama, and be led by them to perfect enlightenment. Rest in meditation. All right, so resting in meditation, alternating this thinking meditation with the empty meditation, it really gets deeper inside you and causes transformation. So in between sessions, or at all times, in all situations, whenever beings are happy and well, instead of being jealous, train of being joyful. Isn't that something? So what I do is I wish I could say I was walking so much during the pandemic. My walking has really suffered. But I walk in super nice neighborhoods. And instead of thinking, oh, I wish I had a house like that beautiful house with that beautiful garden, I think, isn't that wonderful? Those people have this house. I hope they really enjoy the house. I hope they're able to be safe and happy in that house, and they have nothing but joy, So turn those envious thoughts into something really pure. So in that way, you can transform emptiness into this joy. In fact, there's nothing that's, I just kept reflecting that there's no difference between being in my yard and having a beautiful, expensive tree, let's say, and walking down the sidewalk and seeing it there in bloom beautifully, and walking down the sidewalk and seeing that tree in somebody else's yard. It's the same experience. You're enjoying it at equal amounts. Isn't that right? So there's no reason. So then it becomes a cause of happiness indirectly for you, doesn't it? Because everything, and particularly acts of great merit, the helping people who are suffering in practical ways, creating great art, writing great uplifting songs. Every time you hear something like that, you can rejoice in their merit. With regard to your Dharma brothers and sisters who are engaged in study, reflection, and meditation, think, may they never be separated from the happiness and good qualities that come from these. May these never leave them, but go on increasing more and more. Oh, that these things may never leave them. If you meditate on sympathetic joy like this, there will never be any loss or decline in your own study, reflection, or meditation. That's a really good idea. And I think probably there's equivalency for other meritorious activities. If you rejoice in other people's great merit, then probably it buoys up your own experience, parallel experience. As a child of one's mother, it is one's duty to do everything to make her happy. So once you have the thought, all sentient beings are my mothers, I am their child. If they do manage to achieve some happiness on their own without your having to do anything about it, be glad. Meditating like this, there's no way you can go on and on being jealous. So this is interesting. So different teachers present this practice in different ways. For some teachers, I think that it might have even been in the Words of My Perfect Teacher, the volume by Paul Rinpoche. The emphasis is on thinking of activities of all sentient beings throughout space. But here they're using your mother, that building that feeling through your mother that as though it will naturally expand to include all sentient beings. It's an antidote to jealousy and envy, which really need to be undone. It's one of those are among them. Let's see if we can name the 5 poisons, right? So these are things that poison your mind stream. Jealousy, envy is one, right? Ignorance is a big underlying chasm. Anger, of course, terrible poison. Let me try. Okay, now I'm spacing out on the other 2 poisons. Somebody help me. Anger, jealousy. What would the not fear, not sadness. How could I possibly forget? Oh, desire. Wouldn't you know? Desire and going around the circle of the mandala. Aggression, jealousy, and stupidity. Yeah, desire. No, we already got. Let's do the other 5 poisons. Oh my goodness. What's the one I'm missing? You guys are shouting it out at home. I know it. So let's, so we got ignorance, desire, attachment, right? Those are the 3 poisons. And then in addition, we have jealousy and why is my mind blanking out? Oh goodness, I'm even Googling it. So duk nga, desire, anger, ignorance, pride, of course, pride. And this is the one that's the most invisible to us. So that just undermined my pride, and I'm really happy about it. All right, everybody. I guess we're going to wrap up our meditation on boundless joy. And I'll see you next week when we'll discuss evenness, equanimity, equal concern for all sentient beings. These are kind of very foundational building blocks for bodhicitta, which will be our subject over the next few months. Hey, have a good evening. Bye now.